Welcome back to Prospect Direct TV. My people, don't come back again with another Ogbonge update. Right now, I want to talk about trending things in Nigeria. I beg, today be your first time when you discover our channel. Please subscribe, like, share. I beg, share this video, make it go viral so that Nigerians, especially Biafrans, will understand wetin dey happen for this Mazi Simon Ekpa, in Finland. So my people, this is just jubilation galore. The Biafrans are winning all round. The Biafrans, they are all winning. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, right now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu led Nigerian government, they don't dey beg. You get, based on waiting day grant right now, they are begging. And with the way the whole thing is going right now, Simon Ekpa, freedom is already in his pants. You understand? Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much. We go just go straight to the news. Make una hear and see wetin dey happen. Because Biafran's voices, they echo across America as streets erupt in celebrations for Simon Ekpa's freedom. This is really very, very interesting.
Massive street celebration took place in Georgia, United States of America, where United States of Biafra supporters gathered to honor Simon Ekpa during America's Independence Day. The Deputy Prime Minister of the United States of Biafra, Dr. Ngozi Orebweze, and others were seen dancing and chanting Simon Ekpa's name, celebrating his recent bail approval in Finland. The Miami District Court in Finland granted Simon Ekpa bail under strict conditions. He accepted and signed all required documents, raising hopes that he may be released to spend time with his family after over 9 months in detention. Finnish citizens harshly criticized President Alexander Stubb for flying an equality flag at the presidential palace, while allegedly denying Simon Ekpa his human rights and fair treatment, calling his actions hypocritical. A Nigerian man named Ka Oluwabamize was captured by Ukrainian forces while fighting for the Russian army. Reports say he joined Russia's military to avoid a prison sentence after committing a drug-related offense in Russia. The FBI traced a $250,000 fraud related to Donald Trump's 2025 presidential inauguration to Lagos, Nigeria. A man named Ehman Ayokan was arrested for impersonating Donald Trump's committee members through a crypto scam and is facing extradition to the United States. Kenya is investing over $26 million to acquire a modern missile defense system from Israel, aiming to strengthen its air security amidst regional threats. Analysts note Nigeria lacks such a system and continues to plan without concrete action. The Deputy Prime Minister of the United States of Biafra, Dr. Ngozi Orebweze, publicly called for Anambra State Governor Charles Soludo to resign, accusing him of causing security failures through ineffective policies. The new United States of Biafra currency, Ajima, has received global attention. Financial experts advised converting it into a crypto token for better global use. A Russian analyst published an in-depth report on its value and potential. Peter Obi has aligned with the African Democratic Congress alongside Atiku Abubakar and Nasir El-Rufai. However, activist Aisha Yesufu warned she would oppose any ticket where Peter Obi is made a running mate, insisting he should be the main candidate in 2027. Reports suggest Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke, who is related to popular musician Davido, is planning to join the All Progressives Congress, APC, to advance his political career, signaling a significant political shift in the state. July 4, 2025, was not just about American fireworks, parades, and patriotic music. In one corner of the United States of America, in the state of Georgia, something else was happening, something that had little to do with the historical Declaration of American Independence in 1776, but everything to do with a modern struggle for freedom, justice, and political self-determination. This time, the celebration was for a man named Simon Ekpa, a controversial yet influential figure in the Biafran independence movement. On that day, the streets of Georgia exploded with music, flags, and a sea of dancing people waving both the American and Biafran flags, chanting Simon Ekpa's name as if it were the anthem of the day. For many, this was more than just a show of support. It was an emotional release, a long-awaited expression of joy after months of tension, uncertainty, and prayers. Simon Ekpa, who had been in detention for over 9 months in Finland, had finally been granted bail by the Finnish judicial system. This news spread like wildfire across Biafran communities in Nigeria, in Europe, and particularly in the diaspora communities in the United States of America, where many have found refuge from political persecution, social injustice, or economic hardship. The celebrations, especially in Georgia, became a statement of unity, a statement of resistance, and above all, a statement of hope. At the center of the celebration in Georgia stood a familiar and respected figure among Biafran supporters, the Deputy Prime Minister of the self-declared United States of Biafra, Dr. Ngozi Orubueze. She is not just a political leader, but also a passionate voice of the movement. Her presence alone electrified the crowd. With a megaphone in one hand and a Biafran flag in the other, Dr. Ngozi Orubueze joined the people in chants that echoed through the streets. Freedom for Simon, justice for Biafra. Her dance steps were full of energy. Her voice cracked, not from tiredness, but from deep emotion. Dr. Ngozi Orubueze and many others had spent months campaigning, lobbying, and organizing support to draw global attention to Simon Ekpa's arrest and continued detention in Finland. So, when the Finnish court, specifically the Miami District Court, finally granted Simon Ekpa bail, it was seen not just as a legal decision, but as a moral and political victory. And for a people who had felt voiceless for too long, this victory needed to be celebrated in the loudest way possible. Simon Ekpa's bail did not come without conditions. The Finnish court made it very clear that the bail was granted under strict supervision and requirements. Simon Ekpa was required to sign several legal documents, pledging his compliance with the law, his availability for further proceedings, and his commitment to avoid inciting violence or violating any terms of his release. But even with these conditions, the mood across Biafran communities worldwide remained celebratory. After 9 long months behind bars, Simon Ekpa was finally going to breathe fresh air, hug his children, speak to his people, and perhaps even resume some of the work he had started before his arrest. For those unfamiliar with his case, Simon Ekpa's arrest in Finland had sparked major controversy and global debate. Supporters claimed he was targeted for political reasons, accused unfairly by the Nigerian government, and misunderstood by foreign powers. Critics, however, saw him as a dangerous figure whose rhetoric and activities had crossed legal lines. Yet, throughout the trial, what became increasingly clear was that his case was not just about one man. It was about identity, sovereignty, and the question of who gets to decide the future of a people. While the celebrations in Georgia carried on with music, flags, and speeches, not everyone was pleased with the broader political environment surrounding Simon Ekpa's detention. Many Finnish citizens took to social media to express their outrage at what they saw as double standards by their own government. Their anger was directed specifically at President Alexander Stubb of Finland. On the same day, He raised the equality flag, a symbol of human rights, diversity and fairness, at the presidential palace in Helsinki. President Alexander Stubb was being accused of allowing the Finnish government to violate Simon Ekpa's basic human rights. People felt this was hypocrisy in its most naked form. They asked, how can a country fly a flag that stands for inclusion, fairness and equality while keeping a man in detention for 9 months without full transparency or a proper trial? Videos, photos and essays flooded the internet. The contradiction between what the Finnish state preached and what it practiced was not lost on the public. This debate has now taken root both within Finland and among legal analysts around the world. As if the world needed another reminder that justice can often be inconsistent and manipulated by politics, a very different story was developing in Eastern Europe. In Ukraine, a man named Ka Oluwabamise, a Nigerian national, was captured by Ukrainian military forces. What made his story stand out was not just that he was found fighting for the Russian army, but that he had reportedly joined the Russian military to avoid imprisonment for a drug-related offense he committed in Russia. His arrest raised new questions about how African immigrants, refugees and migrants are used or manipulated by major powers during times of war. What does it mean for a young man from Nigeria to find himself holding a weapon, fighting in a foreign war, not for ideology, not for money, but simply to avoid a jail sentence? Some called it survival, others called it modern slavery. Either way, it was a heartbreaking reflection of how broken systems and desperation often intersect to create new forms of injustice. Ka Oluwabamise's story also forced Nigerian diplomats to respond and rethink how many of their citizens end up entangled in international conflicts that have nothing to do with their homeland. Elsewhere in the world, yet another scandal was unfolding, this time in the realm of finance and technology. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, also known as the FBI, traced a massive $250,000 crypto fraud related to the 2025 presidential inauguration campaign of Donald Trump. The trail led them all the way to Lagos, Nigeria. There, a man named Ayman Ayokan was arrested. He had allegedly impersonated members of Donald Trump's campaign committee and convinced several people to donate to what they thought was a real political fundraiser. But it was all a scam. Ayman Ayokan had used cryptocurrency to mask his identity and transactions, a tactic that made it difficult to trace. But eventually, American cybersecurity experts and the FBI caught up with him. He now faces extradition to the United States of America, where he could face a long prison sentence for fraud, impersonation, and cybercrime. The case has reignited discussions on digital crime, cross-border law enforcement, and the dangers of unregulated crypto fundraising. Meanwhile, in East Africa, a very different kind of news was making waves. The Republic of Kenya announced a bold investment move. It had allocated more than $26 million to acquire a modern missile defense system from the State of Israel. According to government spokespersons and military analysts, this was not just a luxury investment. It was a strategic step meant to strengthen Kenya's air defense amid rising regional threats from terrorist groups, foreign aggression, and internal instability in neighboring countries. For Kenyans, this was a welcome development. It signaled that their government was taking national security seriously. But in Nigeria, the news triggered a wave of frustration and criticism. Many Nigerians asked why their country, which faces even more severe security threats from Boko Haram, armed bandits, and separatist groups, still lacked any advanced missile defense systems. Instead, Nigerian leaders were seen planning or discussing with little actual action. It was a sobering reminder of how the same continent could produce such different levels of governance and national priorities. Back in the political corridors of the Biafran movement, things were still tense and evolving. Dr. Ngozi Orubueze used the opportunity during the celebration in Georgia to issue a sharp and public call for the resignation of Anambra State Governor Charles Chukwuma Soludo. Her voice was firm. Her words were deliberate. According to her, Governor Charles Chukwuma Soludo had failed the people of Anambra State through poor policies, weak security strategies, and an inability to protect citizens from rising violence and economic hardship. Her statement sparked intense debates. While some agreed wholeheartedly and said Governor Charles Chukwuma Soludo had lost touch with the people, others believed Dr. Ngozi Orubueze was politicizing an already difficult situation. Either way, the rift between pro-Biafran activists and some southeastern Nigerian political leaders is now wider than ever before. Adding another layer of complexity to the Biafran agenda was the launch of the new Biafran currency called the Ajema. Financial experts across the globe have begun to analyze this currency seriously. Some analysts suggested that if the Ajema is converted into a cryptocurrency token, it might achieve more global usage and acceptance. One Russian economist even published a detailed article on the economic potential of Ajema, highlighting how digital currencies can empower unrecognized or emerging states to build financial independence. And while Biafra celebrates its currency and freedom fighters, Nigeria's internal politics continues to shift like desert sand in a windstorm. Former presidential candidate Peter Gregory Obi has now aligned himself with the African Democratic Congress, a smaller political party with growing influence. He was joined in this alliance by former Vice President Atiku Abubakar and former Kaduna State Governor Nasir Ahmad El-Rufai. The announcement created political shockwaves across Nigeria. Many saw it as a united front of opposition leaders trying to create a powerful coalition ahead of the 2027 general elections. However, not everyone was excited. Prominent activist Aisha Yesufu publicly warned that she would oppose any attempt to make Peter Gregory Obi a running mate rather than the lead presidential candidate. According to her, Peter Gregory Obi has earned the right to lead, not follow. And in Osun State, another significant political shift was rumored. Governor Ademola Adeleke, a relative of the famous Nigerian musician David Adeleke, also known as Davido, was said to be planning a move from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress. If confirmed, this move would drastically change the political landscape in Osun State, where his family name holds enormous influence. His decision to switch parties, possibly to advance his political future or seek higher office, could also affect the national balance of power. The world continues to turn, and with each turn comes a new story, a new hero, a new scandal, or a new hope. But for those who danced in the streets of Georgia on that 4th of July, one story mattered more than the rest. The story of a man named Simon Ekpa, the story of a people called Biafrans, and the story of a dream called freedom. And that dream, though delayed, is far from dead. It lives in the chants of the people, in the boldness of leaders like Dr. Ngozi Orubueze, in the resilience of currencies like Ajema, in the resistance against injustice, and in the prayers of mothers whose sons have been taken too soon. The road ahead may be long, the trials many, but the voices that rang out across Georgia on that day were clear and unwavering. They declared not just the freedom of one man, but the awakening of a people who will no longer be silent, A people who, like Simon Ekpa, refuse to be broken. A people ready to rise, and rise they will. As the celebrations in Georgia spilled from one street to another, it became obvious that this was not just a few dozen supporters rejoicing. This was a full-scale demonstration of solidarity, courage, and defiance. People of all ages participated. Some were elderly men and women who remembered the Biafran War of the late 1960s with tears in their eyes. Others were young men and women who had never seen a gun or battlefield, but carried the stories of their parents and grandparents in their hearts. Many children held flags, danced beside their parents, and repeated the name Simon Ekpa as if they knew him personally. That was the power of a movement, how it could connect generations, build community, and give people a sense of belonging. Some participants had driven for hours from neighboring states like South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee to be part of the event. There were Biafrans who flew in from other parts of the United States of America, from California, New York, and even Canada. What pulled them all together was not only Simon Ekpa's release on bail, but also the shared belief that Biafra must one day rise again, free and sovereign. Speakers took turns addressing the crowd. The central theme was justice, but there were sub-themes: human dignity, the right to self-determination, and the call to end the harassment of pro-Biafran activists worldwide. Several of the speeches included biblical quotes, songs in Igbo, and references to freedom struggles in other parts of the world, such as Palestine, South Sudan, and even the African American civil rights movement. One young man named Emeka Ibekwe stood before the crowd and shared his emotional story. He said he had fled Nigeria 2 years ago after he was arrested and tortured simply for sharing pro-Biafran messages online. He described how he was held in an underground cell in Owerri, beaten with wires, and forced to sign documents confessing to crimes he never committed. When he was finally released, he escaped through Ghana and made it to the United States of America, where he applied for asylum. His voice cracked with emotion as he described seeing Simon Ekpa's face on the news and feeling hope for the first time in years. He ended his speech by holding up a small Biafran flag and shouting, "Freedom is coming. We must not stop now." The crowd roared in agreement. Dr. Ngozi Orabueze, who had been organizing many of these diaspora movements, continued her call for global unity among Biafrans. She urged her listeners to remain focused and peaceful, but never silent. She reminded them that Simon Ekpa's bail did not mean victory yet. It simply meant the door was opening for new conversations, for more advocacy, and for international recognition of the Biafran question. She called on world leaders, especially those in the European Union, the African Union, and the United Nations, to stop treating Biafra as a fringe issue and instead view it through the lens of international law and human rights. In the midst of all this excitement, a group of lawyers and human rights observers arrived quietly to monitor the celebration. Some were from Amnesty International. Others were independent legal scholars who had come to learn more about the Simon Ekpa case and understand the deeper legal implications. Many of them later released short reports praising the peaceful nature of the celebration and acknowledging the need for deeper legal investigations into the conditions under which Simon Ekpa was detained in Finland. Back in Finland, Simon Ekpa's legal team was preparing for the next stage of his case. Though he had been granted bail, the case was far from over. His lawyers had begun filing petitions for the full dismissal of charges, arguing that the evidence against him was based on political manipulation by the Nigerian government and was not strong enough to justify continued proceedings. Meanwhile, pro-democracy activists in Helsinki, Espoo, and other parts of Finland had started forming small support groups to raise awareness of Simon Ekpa's case and demand legal reforms to prevent future political detentions in Finland. The Finnish media, which had previously treated Simon Ekpa's case as a national security concern, began shifting its tone. Journalists started interviewing his supporters, publishing opinion pieces, and investigating the pressure placed on Finnish authorities by foreign governments. A few newspapers openly questioned whether Finland, a country known for its high human rights standards, had allowed itself to be dragged into the political battle between the Nigerian state and Biafran activists. In Nigeria, the reaction to Simon Ekpa's bail was mixed. The federal government in Abuja released a short statement saying it respected the decision of the Finnish court, but would continue to pursue legal channels to ensure that individuals responsible for inciting violence and disunity in Nigeria are held accountable. This statement was seen by many as a veiled threat. It signaled that even if Simon Ekpa was free in Finland, he remained a marked man in Nigeria. In the southeastern part of Nigeria, reactions were more emotional. In places like Aba, Owerri, Onitsha, and Enugu, people gathered to celebrate quietly, afraid of police retaliation. Some set off fireworks. Others shared the news through WhatsApp groups, Facebook pages, and encrypted messages. Parents told their children stories of the original Biafran War and how history was being rewritten before their eyes. However, not everyone was celebratory. Some Nigerian citizens, even from the southeast, remained critical of Simon Ekpa, accusing him of promoting violence, disrupting economic activity, and making life harder for the average Igbo person. These divisions revealed the deep cracks in Nigerian society and the Biafran movement itself, between those who believe in armed resistance and those who prefer diplomatic negotiation, between the diaspora and those who live under the daily threat of police and military harassment. Amid all this, news broke that international organizations had begun to look into the broader Biafran crisis more seriously.
So guys, what's your take on this? Thank you very much for staying to the end of this video. Please like, share, and don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Bye for now.